The day in the life of a Students for Life Field Team Champion. Hey everyone, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast.
The pro-life movement as a whole is striving every day to ensure that no woman in an unexpected pregnancy stands alone.
On August 28th, church leaders around the U.S. are gathering to learn how to support pregnant women in their communities. And here's why. Since Roe v. Wade, women in our country have been lied to. Over 73% of Americans don't know where to find nonviolent pregnancy resources in their own communities, while abortion continues to be promoted and made easily accessible. As we step into a post-Roe America, Christians must be at the forefront of changing this reality and bringing life-affirming resources to pregnant women and their unborn babies. This is where churches can step in. More than half of abortion-seeking women identify as Christian or Catholic and often look to the church for help and guidance. Church leaders must be equipped to bring resources and empowering conversations to the pregnant, new moms, and their communities. Are you ready? Don't miss the nationwide event, Standing With Her Sunday on August 28th, and learn how you can support the most vulnerable in your community, so no woman stands alone.
I am so excited for today's episode because our team at Students for Life works harder than any team you'll ever meet. And our field team, those on our team who go to college campuses at least 4 days a week, high school campuses 4 days a week, to have conversations with young people about abortion, to help Students for Life chapters get off the ground, overcome adversity, they are nonstop, and they are truly the superheroes of this pro-life movement. Our field team at Students for Life was so elated by the reversal of Roe versus Wade because they've been on the ground in communities, on campuses, preparing for this post-Roe era for years. And today's guest is no exception. But one thing that struck me in particular about this field team member on our Students for Life staff was how quickly she hit the ground running after Roe was reversed. Mary Carmen Zakrajsek grew up in Indiana, Carmel, Indiana, graduated from Mary University after studying political science and Spanish. Her pro-life journey, get this, began when she was in middle school after she heard a presentation about abortion in her youth group. She was a Students for Life fellow, served in 2 Students for Life fellowships. In high school, her pro-life group faced a legal battle with her administration over the First Amendment rights, which she fought and she won. She helped revive the Knights for Life group, the pro-life group at her university, as president of Mary University's pro-life group in college, and she was a rock star Students for Life leader when she was in college. Since she's left college, she's joined our team at Students for Life as our Indiana regional coordinator. She has been featured on NPR, the Indy Star, the State House File, a lot of, basically any big newspaper, media outlet in Indiana, they have featured Mary Carmen in her work. She lives in Indianapolis as she serves all pro-life student chapters and organizations in the state of Indiana. Mary Carmen, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Kristan. It's such an honor to be on here and having you as our fearless leader. I'm excited to share my tips and what I've done.
Yeah, I am really excited to feature you because you guys have had so much going on in Indiana post-Roe already. You were preparing all the Students for Life groups. And how many Students for Life groups are there in Indiana?
We have about 60 active pro-life groups in Indiana.
And it's incredible. I mean, it's a great testament to the work of Indiana Right to Life and so many others throughout the years who've really built up a pro-life culture. And it's so important, in fact, that, Indiana, while being a small state, geographically actually has a full-time person, and that's you, because there's so much going on in Indiana. And there's so much momentum. It's been incredible. But you have a pretty exhausting and sometimes even dangerous job. You were personally assaulted. And so I definitely want to hear, your story, and you tell it what it's like to be that, boots on the ground, the activists in the pro-life movement, especially Students for Life activists every day, what they face. Because I think, what you all are doing there in Indiana is just so, so important. And it really, the eyes of the nation are upon you all, what's going on. I'm going to get to that. And I have some stuff I want to ask you about current events. But first, can you explain to the subscribers and the listeners of Explicitly Pro-Life, what is your job as a Students for Life Field Team member, as a regional coordinator? What's it like every day, like going to campuses, knocking on doors, rallying and testifying at state houses, going to public events? I mean, I feel like no one day is ever the same at Students for Life. So can you tell everyone what it's like, and what do you do day to day to mobilize and inspire this entire generation throughout Indiana?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that it can be exhausting. That's definitely true. It can be very exhausting, right? As a regional coordinator, you wear a lot of hats. So nationally, Students for Life exists to recruit, train, and mobilize the pro-life generation to abolish abortion. And every regional coordinator essentially does just that in their region. And so as a regional coordinator, I recruit students in middle school, high school, colleges. We have 3 law school groups now in Indiana. Awesome. Constantly out on campus. There are days, especially during the fall and spring tour season, where I'm in a new city every single day, meeting and engaging with different students. So recruiting and then training them, educating them. So the regional coordinator really serves as the mentor for these students. I think what's really powerful and amazing about Students for Life, and really one of the reasons why we're so successful, is that it is young people leading young people. I just turned 23, right? I am fresh out of college. I've lived the experience. As you mentioned, I had a legal battle in my high school. I've been there. I know the hardships, the struggle that I can face as a pro-life student. And so having all that experience, as so many regional coordinators have under their belt, and then being able to really communicate and connect on a personal level with these students and lead them to be confident and articulate in speaking about abortion, yes, is exhausting, but it is so rewarding. It is so fruitful. You wear a lot of different hats. So a lot of times I'll be speaking or giving a training or maybe an all-school assembly talk. And then I'm driving to speak to their pro-life ministry and look at, okay, how can we support pregnant and parenting women in the church? If 40% of women who are obtaining abortions, if they identify as Christians, well, how are we reaching them in our pews? Abortion is not just outside. Sadly, abortion has made its way inside of the church. And so I've gotten to partner along with my community organizer with about 17 different churches in the Indianapolis area, really cheering them on and encouraging them to be the strong leaders in their own community. And then, the next day I might be driving downtown to the State House and encouraging students to testify on a bill in the special session, or whether I'm, calling and emailing our representatives. It's a lot of different avenues and different areas that you get to explore. And you're really the pro-life face for your generation, for your state. And it's powerful. And this can be said for any aspect of nonprofit work or, the pro-life movement. It's hard sometimes to see the fruits of your labor, to see the fruits of your reward. You might go months after speaking at a school and not know if you made an impact. And the little rewards that you hear along the way that make you think, oh my gosh, if it wasn't for this training or this tabletop that Students for Life had brought to their campus, this person would now not be leading the group. That happened to me a few months ago. I was at a conference working, for Students for Life for our festival, one of our booths at the festival. And this student came up to me and he had messaged me earlier, and he had never been involved in pro-life work. And stopping by the pro-life Students for Life fall tour display, the See Me Now display last semester, that was his first time engaging with anybody really active in the student pro-life movement. And we had a conversation. I talked to him about the display and the different, the different violent procedures of abortion. And he spent the rest of that afternoon volunteering at that display, educating and recruiting people just like him that were walking by about the fall tour display. And later on, he messaged me and he said that, that led him to be an official member in his pro-life group at Purdue University. That led him to attend a life chain that they had in their city. And now he's an active member in their club. And so I got to get a picture of him when I was at this festival, and share with all of my community advocates and supporters that making a difference in the lives of these young people.
That's awesome. And I think, I just want to underscore the power of, the entire pro-life movement working together, because what I see in Indiana is so much of you being able to mobilize these young people, whether or not you've kind of recruited or planted that seed in their mind or somebody else, is the entire, what's so special about what's happened in Indiana, and we see this in a couple other places across the country, is you have a really strong statewide group there, and with Mike Victor and Indiana Right to Life, and then you have these really strong county structures, and we don't really have that in many places in the country anymore, sadly. And so you've had this culture for decades where youth groups and churches are getting involved in what you're doing in Indianapolis with our Abortion Free Cities project. I know for a fact every regional coordinator across our organization had a goal last year of getting churches to partner with them for the Abortion Free Cities project. You, I think, outpaced every single one of our regional coordinators by getting 17 churches to partner with, which, by the way, it is extremely difficult to get a church to say, yes, we want to be an official partner with a secular pro-life group to end abortion in our community. That is not an easy sales pitch. Let me just tell you that. But I think it's such a testament to just all of the work that's been done there in Indiana for decades, where you can come in and really, a lot of times, kind of harvest some of the fruit that was planted years ago. And now you're paying it forward with these young people that you're speaking to at colleges and conferences and festivals that, we don't know if they're going to join a Students for Life group, but maybe in 10 years, they'll be the one testifying in the State House. So I love that. And I think it's, what you're doing and all of the work and the richness of what you're doing, all the different niches that you're involved in, I think are very important. I think really shows the breadth of Students for Life and the importance of what our mission is to recruit and then, train and then send out this entire generation. Can you, there was a Bands Off Our Bodies rally this year, I think it was just May, the boob rallies, which I didn't realize that's what their acronym was. And you were actually assaulted during that rally. Can you tell us what happened? And then can you tell us what types of precautions that you're trying to take now, not only for yourself, but then also fellow students and activists, and what other kind of activists should be thinking about when they enter in these hostile climates and really get in the fray to hold up a pro-life sign, to change and challenge the media narrative. Like, one, I guess, what happened? Two, how to protect yourself. And three, why is it important that you put yourself in situations where there's going to be people who hate you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it can be really intimidating. I was intimidated even just putting yourself out there. When this leak came of the draft decision for the Supreme Court, a lot of people, a lot of average Americans who, again, don't really know what abortion is, but they've heard all their life this positive and pretty rhetoric that packages up abortion as something fundamental to our nature as women. And so when they hear that it's about to be, taken away, or that the court changes their mind onto whether it's a constitutional right, there's a lot of anger. And so when that happened, there were lots and lots of rallies and protests happening all over Indianapolis. Defend Roe rallies, emergency abortion rallies, Bands Off Our Bodies.
Boob rallies.
Yeah. And so we knew that it was important to respond, that we couldn't let the media only think and be deceived into thinking that all young people are for abortion. And so it was a couple of days after that leak came, there was a huge rally in Indianapolis at our central called Monument Circle. And so we had texted and emailed lots of students from all over the state asking, is anybody able to come with us and be the voice for these preborn children and really show our joy, right? This is a joyous moment that they tried robbing from us. After 50 years, we truly are the generation that will see this in our lifetime come to an end. And so we had gotten a strategy, and I'll talk about this a little afterwards. Strategy is really important when you're putting yourself out in a hostile environment. But essentially, we were walking up to the monument. It was a group of about, 30 plus high school, college students, a couple of church members that we partnered with. And we're walking up, and there's a group of about maybe 500 pro-abortion protesters. And they're all on this center monument. And this is public property, right? We have the right to be there. And so we circle around and we're chanting, and we start walking up the steps. And right away, we are being grabbed and shoved and pulled. And again, public property, we have the right to be there, right? Everybody's at the top of this monument. And so we quickly realized, okay, this is no longer a rally. This is going to turn into a riot. And so during that rally, riot, whatever you call it, as we were trying to ascend to the top of this monument, I was actually picked up by this woman who's the Black Lives Matter spokesperson for Indianapolis. She had picked me up, and we got it on video. It almost looks like I'm, in a headlock essentially, and restrained me. And she was shouting in my ear, you don't have a right to be here, go home. And I kept saying, I have a right to be here. I have a right to be here. I was doing nothing wrong. I was not shoving anybody, right? I was trying to get up these steps. And she was detaining me and screaming in my ear until finally she pushed me away. And that was really jolting, because we know that pro-life is pro-woman, but their side proclaims pro-choice, or now pro-abortion is pro-woman. And yet you're attacking young women, right, who disagree with your stance. You're assaulting young women. I was not the only one assaulted that day. And I knew, okay, I want to protect my students from this. I want to make sure that we have a plan. We're not going to be here the whole time. We're really here to make our voice known. And we're content with that. And so pretty soon they had actually encircled our group. They had come around us and formed a circle, and we were kind of locked in the middle. And we just stayed there chanting and cheering. And it's really important that we communicate our joy, right? That we are smiling when we are dancing on the grave of Roe v. Wade. And so it was really neat, actually. We were dancing. We were kind of, just trying to stay positive in the midst of just this really violence and negativity. And it worked. All of the media that was there to cover that event now sees this group of passionate, exuberant pro-life students. And suddenly we make the front page, right? And we get to tell our story. We get to be interviewed as to why we're there today. And so that, while it was scary and really disappointing that this is what we resort to, we can no longer have dialogues or conversation. It just results to screaming and detaining people who disagree with you. We left that afternoon, and we just all sat around and debriefed, and I think it was really eye-opening for our students who had never engaged in a rapid response event before, or who had never gone to a rally, just kind of to see the monster that we're up against, but also to see the steadfastness and the perseverance and the passion that exists within the pro-life community that really just bonded us that day, and continued to bond us throughout the rest of the summer leading into the special session. And so just some safety precautions to take. We actually always recommend, if you can't have a body cam, just always have somebody record. How we got the footage of when that lady had assaulted me was one of our students had a body cam, and the other student recording with his phone the whole time. And so recording is always great. Another thing is to have strategy. So don't meet at the location where hundreds, if not thousands, of pro-aborts are coming to show off their summer of rage, right? Meet at a separate location, wear the same color that identifies you all. So we all wore light blue, okay? Have a coherent message and a purpose for why you're being there. It can be really hard to change somebody's mind when they're all riled up and angry. And so maybe at this event, we're not going to focus on trying to have one-on-one conversations, but we're going to focus on showing our collective movement and our collective voice. And that are the pro-life generation, right? And then travel together and stay together. So we met at a separate location. We walked over. We knew we were going to be outnumbered, but that didn't shy us away, right? And we stayed there for a set amount of time. We said, okay, we're going to be here for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then we will get up and leave. And so those are just basic things, making sure that you count how many people are there when you arrive and that you leave with the amount of people.
I love it.
You just gave me a whole SFLA activism training back to myself. I love it. These are awesome tips, I think, for any pro-life gen member who's considering engaging in activism, especially in this culture, in this post-Roe era where those who support abortion in many regards are unhinged. I love the fact that you had 30 people and you just walked into a crowd of hundreds with no fear, or at least not showing the fear out loud. I think that speaks volumes, and you're absolutely right. You were able to transform the narrative that day by being there. Just by being there with some pro-life signs, the media had to cover the pro-life side. Whereas if you hadn't shown up, they only would have covered the pro-abortion side. That would have been a one-sided story. Instead, the story was these joyful young people versus these very angry younger and older people, and also that those who support abortion were committed an act of violence against a pro-lifer, showing what their whole movement is about. I guess I have two more questions before we go. One question is a little longer, so hopefully you can be concise, because I think this could be a whole podcast episode. But you were on the ground. I was so impressed. So we've always, my big thing with Students for Life in 16 years has been, the moment Roe is reversed, will we have the people on the ground? Will we be able to instantly mobilize in our state houses with trained advocates who respond to the call? And it was so gratifying to see what you were doing there in Indiana. So the governor called a special session in Indiana after Roe fell to address abortion. And you were there leading the charge. I saw you in all the newspaper articles, you with your bullhorn at the state capitol. There were, I think, a fourth of all the people who testified again for the bill were pro-life student leaders that you had recruited and brought to the capitol. I was so excited because I was like, yes, it worked. The vision worked, and you're living it out. I was cheering you on from behind a computer, sadly. But what ended up passing in Indiana, there was a lot of controversy. In fact, the entire pro-life movement in Indiana, which there's a kind of, some strategic divisions, as there always are in the pro-life movement, about bills and legislation. The entire pro-life movement was pretty much united that this is a bad bill that we finally got. Can you explain? Some people are like, the mainstream media is using it as this huge victory for the pro-life movement. And I think the reason they're doing that is because they want to scare pro-aborts into making sure they vote in the midterm elections. But it's really not the victory that we all wanted. Can you explain what happened and what the new law that's been signed into effect does?
Sure. Let me kind of paint the picture and set the stage, because Indiana was the first state in the entire country to call a special session when Roe was reversed. And so the opportunity that we had before us, right? The court ruled that there is no constitutional right to an abortion, and that the states can decide on a local and a state level, right, even on a national level, how we are going to deal with the horrible tragedy and issue of abortion. And we have a supermajority in Indiana, in the House and in the Senate. We have many politicians who claim to be pro-life, right, who even ran on the pro-life platform. And many of us were expecting, right, hopeful, but expecting a strategic, comprehensive pro-life bill that would protect life at conception, right? And then clearly and explicitly define life of the mother situations, right? Ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion, miscarriage removal is not an abortion, etc. And so this is what we had been pushing for. This is what we had been, ready for. And then a week the special session is to begin, a few days, actually, the Wednesday before, the Senate holds a press release and they unveil this bill that they're going to introduce. This pro-life bill had numerous loopholes and exceptions to protect abortionists, to allow abortion clinics to operate. And really, it had no intention of ending abortion in Indiana. It got to the point where really every pro-life group, local, state, even national pro-life groups, calling out the Indiana legislature on this bill. We elected pro-life representatives in office. We finally have the opportunity to protect all preborn life. Why are we caving? Why all of these loopholes?
What is the loopholes in the bill, actually? Because Indiana, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you would know this, was one of the first states to pass the Prenatal Non-Discrimination Act, saying you can't have an abortion simply because of a child's genetic code, right?
Yeah, so that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. We can't abort children because of Down syndrome, right? If they're diagnosed in the womb to have Down syndrome, that's not a reason for abortion. And yet in this bill that they proposed, the vague language they use, at first it was fetal abnormality, and then it became lethal, or it was fetal fatal abnormality, and then it became lethal fatal anomaly, or lethal fetal anomaly, which now says, if the child is predicted to not survive within the first 90 days after birth, then termination is justifiable. In that sense, when it was going through all these amendments, and classify that at abortion, terminating a child because of their genetic differences or probabilities. So there were so many loopholes. We knew that we had to be there in large numbers, and we had to testify. At the first day of the special session, there was, I think, 39 people that got to testify, and the majority of them were pro-life. Majority were pro-life. And I think it just shows really the beauty in collaboration with other pro-life organizations in your state, and getting to know the other local pro-life leaders. With Indiana Right to Life, with groups up in, South Bend, Hoosier Conservative Voices, with groups in Fort Wayne, Northeast Indiana Right to Life, Southwest Indiana Right to Life. All of us really came together and said, okay, we need to bus people in, right? We know the other side is very good at mobilizing. Let's collaborate and let's bus as many people to the State House on this day. And so we had 12 buses that were sent from every corner of Indiana, hundreds and hundreds. There's like 1,500 people there. Indiana Right to Life had put on this amazing rally, right? Everybody wore blue. We had a chance to talk to our legislators. We rallied and chanted as the Senate was debating the amendments for this bill right outside the Senate chamber. It was powerful. It was really powerful. And it was important that we were there, because political convenience, right, now suddenly determines which innocent child lives and which baby dies.
So what happened in Indiana? So you rallied, you did your part. What happened?
So it passed. The Senate Bill 1 ended up passing. It was signed into law. And so thankfully, there was an amendment added at the last second in the House that would remove the licensure from abortion facilities. So it said that we will outlaw abortion, right, except in cases of rape or incest. So if somebody is a victim of rape, they will be allowed to abort their child up to 10 weeks in pregnancy, post-fertilization. It allows abortion in cases of the genetic probability differences, right, with fetal anomalies. It also allows abortion in cases of physical health or life of the mother. And those are really the three main exceptions. We are hoping one of the amendments was it established kind of a legislative oversight to monitor this if a prosecutor fails to, prosecute abortionists. See, the problem is 70% of the abortions in Indiana occur in Marion County, and the prosecutor of Marion County has already come out saying he will not prosecute abortionists. All that is needed is the mother's consent. And so
he won't do his job, the law he's sworn to uphold.
Right. And we see this every week.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're pushing, we're persevering, we're going to hold our legislators accountable because they had the chance to protect all life at conception during the amendment roll calls. And many of these politicians said no.
So it's like a partial victory. We saw this. I mean, it should eliminate 95% of abortions, right? Roughly. So that's huge. If the Supreme Court, if the state legislature will hold the Marion County prosecutor, to his actual job, hold him accountable. It should eliminate 95%. So that's a massive win in that regard. Still not as good as we should have gotten in the state of Indiana with as many pro-life legislators that have been elected. And I think there's a certain few in leadership that I think their constituents need to be educated about their role, because I don't really think you guys should have had to fight that hard and have to bus in, more than 1,500 people and student leaders for them to do their damn job, to be honest with you. So thank you, though, for being there. I mean, that was a long fight. It was a couple of nonstop weeks, I know, for you and for all the Students for Life leaders in Indiana. One last question, I'm going to let you go. What about those? I get pinged all the time from folks who are considering joining the pro-life movement full time, whether they're in college, whether they've already started their career. What's your concise piece of advice for someone who's considering joining the pro-life movement full time? Should they do it? And what should they be thinking about?
This is the most important work we can be doing on earth. Do it. Absolutely. Outside of saving souls, this is the most important work we can be doing on earth. I tell my students this all the time. If abortion isn't wrong, if this doesn't matter, if killing an innocent child isn't wrong, then nothing is wrong. There's no point to education. There's no point to law. There's no point to society if we can't even protect innocent children from being killed, right? By their own mothers, by their own family. This truly determines our outlook on everything. And this, of any other time, this most momentous, pivotal point in the pro-life movement, that you need to do it. If you're contemplating, if you're thinking about going full-time into pro-life service, pro-life work, do it. Just do it.
Awesome. Amen, sister. I agree 100%. Thank you so much, Mary Carmen, for coming on today. How can folks follow you and your journey in Indiana?
Sure. You can follow me, my Instagram account. I post on there a lot with updates. Mary Carmen _SFLA. You can also email me, mzakrajsek@studentsforlife.org, and I'd be happy to connect with you.
Thanks, Mary Carmen. Thanks for all that your work is doing and producing throughout the state of Indiana. And I think hopefully this is a shout out to the entire field team and all the region coordinators at Students for Life America, to thank them for their incredible work. There's more than 20 of them spread out across the country, covering every state. Keep them in your prayers and think about them, because as you heard from Mary Carmen, this is not usual work. This is difficult work. It's something that is a special calling, but has a true impact that's changing hearts and minds and saving lives. Thanks, Mary Carmen. And thank you all for tuning in this week at Explicitly Pro-Life. Make sure you share this episode and you subscribe to the podcast.